Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the optional memorial of Saint Elizabeth of Portugal or Saint Elizabeth of Hungary, a wonderful woman who really lived out her faith beautifully, even in the political world and, of course, in her social life. She really followed the Lord's command. When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. She was truly a peacemaker as well. Remember in the Beatitudes, Jesus said, the peacemakers are called the children of God. So Elizabeth of Portugal, Elizabeth of Hungary, really took seriously what the Lord has really stated for all of us as a way of life. So I'm very happy that I celebrated that optional memorial for her today. Also, I want to continue with our discussion about Holy Mass. We're almost finished with it, but I wanted to talk to you about communion, the communion processional. You know, it's very beautiful that the communion hymn, do you ever think of the communion hymn? I think we talked about this before, but the communion hymn should be a reflection of the gospel of that day. Why? Well, because the word becomes flesh. So when we're receiving Holy Communion, we should be singing the gospel that Jesus uttered for that Mass as we're approaching him in his body and blood as he becomes flesh for us. Doesn't that make sense? So the word becomes flesh and dwells among us in Holy Communion. And the word dwells among us in that word. So that word and sacrament, both and not either or, is commingled with us, body and soul, both and not either or. So I say all these things because it's Catholic theology, first of all. But I want you to remember that. And I think, you, Father, we heard you 50,000 times with both and not either or. Good. That makes me happy. I'm not insulted. Because too many Catholics don't know how to articulate their faith. So when they're in a situation, they don't know what to say, but you'll know what to say. You'll know exactly how to articulate your faith and what the church believes for centuries. Centuries the church believed this. It's not nothing new under the sun. It's not like, this must be Second Vatican Council or something that Pope Francis popped up with. No. This has been the teaching of the Catholic faith for centuries. This is part of our very dogma and doctrine. The meat and the potatoes of really putting the flesh on everything that we believe that comes from Christ to the apostles and to their successors. We talked about that, didn't we? Didn't we talk about apostolic succession? How do you articulate that to people? How do you let people understand here is Christ speaking to the apostles, choosing Peter, the first pope, those apostles and their successors, apostolic succession to this day. How do we understand the church? Remember I said, how do you define church with a capital C? Not small c, not like a place that you go to pray or to worship, because we have to be very careful that it's not just the functional building. So when we speak of church as capital C, there's only one church. All the other places that call themselves churches are ecclesial communities. Please don't refer them as churches. I know you see Lutheran Church, Episcopal Church, Methodist Church. Might be a small c, but on their sign they have a capital C. Incorrect, wrong. Jesus founded one church on the confession of St. Peter's faith and the apostle and their direct apostolic succession without any break. As soon as you break, you're starting your own ecclesial body, you're not part of the church. Okay, I just have to tell you this because I think it's so important, because you guys meet people probably more than I do. They probably, I don't know, yesterday at 4th of July, were you at company, did that people talk about religion? You know, it comes up once in a while. I mean, after sports and after the grandkids, you know, people talk about religion. So, you know, who doesn't practice the Catholic faith anymore? Who has this to say? Who has this to say? Everybody has their opinion. Don't everyone have their opinion? Well, make sure you set them straight. Make sure you give them the right stuff. So, when we're talking about communion, we talked about this before, but I want to reiterate it again. Communion in the sense of not only receiving the sacred species, because we call that communion, right? Communion is to be in union with. So if you take the word communion, C-O-M, and then union. So union with, because it comes from the Latin. Union with Christ and his church. So you're coming into communion, or you're in communion with the Catholic Church. That's very important to understand, both and, not either or. So it is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, right? Body, blood, soul, divinity. It is also part of the deposit of faith. It is that I'm in communion with what the church teaches, because Christ is the church. He's the head of the church. So I can't be outside of communion. So remember we talked about excommunion, or the common word excommunication, right? So where do you think that comes from? Leaving communion, excommunion, exiting from the communion that you share with the body of Christ, the teachings of the church. So if you're excommunicated, you have excommunicated that either by yourself or by a formal decree. Because some people excommunicate themselves from the table of the Lord. They don't. They excommunicate, whether they wholeheartedly believe, promote, and advance teachings that are outside of the realm of the deposit of faith. They have excommunicated themselves. The church is not going to sit down and write a formal decree. People have written their own formal decrees because they have excommunicated themselves. I've said that to several parishioners already. I mean, they'll say, Father, why did the Archbishop of New York, or why did the Archbishop of Portland and Oregon, or I said, because that person already excommunicated themselves. The Archbishop did not, or the Bishop of the diocese did not have to do a formal decree from the Holy Father. For instance, those who have an abortion, sad to say, you know, it's a sad event for people's lives, but it's a serious offense against God, you know. So your heart breaks for people who are in a predicament like that, but you want to say to them, don't do that. Don't do that. They think that's their only way out. They terminate the pregnancy. In other words, they kill the child. But the point is, anyone who aborts excommunicates themselves. Do you know that sin was reserved to the Holy See and to the bishop of the local diocese? Like, a priest up until at least 35 years ago, maybe 30, was not allowed to absolve the sin of abortion. Now, the priest has the faculty or the permission to absolve the sin of abortion. We would have to write, not telling the name, never telling the name, but write to the Archbishop. Then he will write back and tell us what the penance would be. then we would absolve the person and give them the penance. That has changed now. All priests has the faculty or the permission to absolve someone of abortion and automatic excommunication. I've said this to you before. There's different degrees of excommunication. Remember I said that? Because if you're probably thinking of the superlative, the highest excommunication by a formal decree, right? Well, there's all these other levels. Let's face it, when you commit a mortal sin, you're excommunicated, right? You can't go to communion. Now, maybe that's not we don't think of that like the highest, like Martin Luther. He was excommunicated because he did not believe in the deposit of faith as the church articulated it. He excommunicated himself. Well, the church gave him a formal decree. It was becoming a public scandal. So I think we have to understand what that means. So if you or I have committed a mortal sin and we can't go to communion, we have exit communion. Exit communion. Excommunicated. We can't be communicated. Because when I distribute communion to people, they're a communicant, right? When the priest receives Holy Communion, he self-communicates. He self-communicates. When I distribute communion to a person, they are a communicant. I'm only saying all this because I want these words to take heart in all of you and you to understand them. So when you talk to people, you can articulate it in a way that people can understand. So excommunication has obviously various degrees. There is a formal decree, but there's others, okay? By the mere fact, the church calls it ipso facto. I think we talked about this as well. It's two Latin words, not that you have to study Latin. It's very easy. Ipso facto, by the mere fact. By the mere fact that you committed an abortion, you have excommunicated yourself. By the mere fact that you committed adultery, you excommunicated yourself. You don't need the Pope to say, John Smith, you are now excommunicated from the church. Then you go to confession. Blessed be Father, for I have sinned. I committed an act of adultery. Priest will counsel them, like, are you with this person anymore? No, it's over. It's over. Okay. Please try your best. Please don't put yourself in the occasion of sin. Or whatever the priest may say, for your penance it will be this. Well, then he's reinstated back to communion again. Okay? So, whether they're politicians, whether they're family men or family women, whether they're a priest like Martin Luther, there's various degrees of excommunication. But I think we have to understand what that word means and just understand that I'm exiting from communion. I'm not in communion with the church anymore, because the fullest expression of my life as a Catholic is my ability to be in communion sacramentally and my lived life with the church. Do you understand? Does that make sense to you? Right. So I have friends who are divorced and remarried. Now, I have a friend who is divorced and remarried, and this person Mass every Sunday. but does not go to communion. And will tell you, I am a Catholic, but I do not go to communion because I was divorced. And after my divorce, I remarried somebody else outside of the church. I don't go to communion. Now, why does she understand that? Why are there people that think that communion is like a little reward for just going to the service, going to Mass? It's something deeper, more theological. And I think we have to all understand that. So if you're divorced and remarried outside of the church, no, you cannot go to communion. You have an obligation to go to Mass every Sunday. That's not that is part of your life as a Catholic. Absolutely, to remember to keep holy the Sabbath day, to assist and participate at daily, to assist, when I say assist, you're participating at Mass. But to receive Holy Communion, if you're in mortal sin, no. You wait until you could go to confession. But in this situation, she can't even go to confession. Because if you go to confession, that means that you broke it off. So can a divorced person go to communion? Yes. Yes, a divorced person can go to communion as long as they're not with another person. How about if they're dating a person? No, they can't go to communion. Because you're under your vows. You're still under your vows. Even a priest, if the priest left the priesthood, could he go to communion? Yes. As long as he's living the vows. But if he is dating someone without being laicized, he cannot go to communion. He has to be at Mass. Now, laicization for the priest is like the annulment for the married person. Have you ever heard of laicization? A priest is laicized. It means their faculties are removed. They cannot present themselves as a priest nor dress as one. They are no longer allowed to present themselves as a priest or dress as one. They are laicized. When an annulment is given to a person under those vows, they are dispensed of the vows that they took, and they can remarry. But until that is given, they cannot, nor can they date. That's why we say to people, like, you're divorced, I would apply for an annulment right away, because you don't know when that lovebird will come along and you'll meet somebody, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can't even date you because I'm still under my marriage vows. Well, some people don't even care. I don't care. They got a civil divorce, they think, I'm good to go. No, you're not. No, you're not. Because I'm telling you, if you're divorced, you apply for the annulment right away. But you can't apply for the annulment unless you're civilly divorced. That must come before you apply for the annulment. All right, I'm just talking to you again about excommunication. See, we're not in communion. We're not able to receive communion. You may say, I believe everything the church teaches except for marriage. You can't do that. See, you're not in communion with us. You're not in communion with us. Why cannot people from another ecclesial community receive communion at a funeral mass or a wedding mass? Sometimes they want to come up, you know. You have Lutherans and Episcopalians and Methodist people come up in the communion line, and you're like, what's this? Oh, there's only one God, there's only one Jesus, I'm going to come up. You know, they're going to tell you that. I'm not arguing that there's only one Jesus and there's only one God. I'm not arguing that fact. What I'm arguing with, you have already removed yourself from the church. Whether you did it or you were born Lutheran or Methodist, you're already away from the church. You're not in communion with us in what you believe, profess, and live. So communion is not taking the consecrated host, it's both and. That's why at funeral masses and wedding masses, I always make a statement. For those who are Catholic and are able to receive our Lord in Holy Communion, you may come up the center aisle and return by the way of the side aisles. For those who are not Catholic and for those Catholics not able to receive Holy Communion today, we kindly ask you to remain in your pews and offer your prayers for the couple or the deceased person. So everyone knows that not only are Catholics to receive Holy Communion, but Catholics who believe in what the church teaches. It's both. It's not one or the other. Okay? So, all right, that's a lot to digest. It's kind of was a little heavy today, but that's okay. You know, sometimes we need heavy. Sometimes we need good stuff and to fill us, to fill our souls. And plus we need to know. I don't want you to think the church changed her teaching or, oh, they don't believe in that anymore. Everything's okay. Who cares? No. So we understand communion in that fashion, both and, not either or. And when even the communion line, the communion processional line, it's a beautiful procession. We're always walking with each other, which means that we're walking with the church. Do you get it? Both and, not either or. You're walking with the church. So when you're walking up for communion, you're not walking alone. You're not the church all by yourself. It's not the church according to John Smith or the gospel according to John Smith. You're walking in communion with others who believe, profess, and live everything that the Holy Roman Catholic Church teaches, believes, and lives as revealed by God. That's it, folks. That's what we do, and that's what we believe. All right? Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to you. Tomorrow's the beautiful obligatory memorial of Maria Goretti. Today is the optional memorial of Saint Elizabeth of Hungary or Portugal. She was, talk about living her faith, absolutely, not a question. Some people are like they protect their family. You know how mom and dad protect their family and provide for them? And there's people that do that and also protect their family, the church. That was Elizabeth of Hungary. There's people here, I'm sure you are one of them. There's people in this parish that take care of their family, but they're a mama bear to the Catholic Church as well. It's like, don't you go there. Don't you go there. Because I'm a mama bear for my church as well. So don't you bash or talk negative about my church because you don't know. Well, I want all of you to be a mama bear to your other family, the family of faith that you and I profess and believe in. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm a papa bear. I'm a papa bear with people when it comes to the faith. I'm not going to let them bash the church. Not in front of me. Oh, you're going to get a fight. You're going to get a fight from me. I'm not going to move. When someone hits you, but I'm not going to move. I'm not going to move. That's what Jesus said. When someone hits you in the right cheek, give them the left. Don't move. Be consistent in your faith. That's what we need. So tomorrow we'll talk about Maria Goretti, but I also want to talk about how to receive Holy Communion. Have a nice day, everybody.